Welcome to New Realities. My name is Alan Steinfeld, and on this program I explore creativity, art, science, and how we are evolving as beings into a new reality. So tonight's guest is somebody who fulfills a lot of points of interest that come up for me on this show, the art and the science, and how the two merge together. He's Dr. Edward Belbruno. He's an artist and a scientist, a leading edge in both areas. He has an art show coming up on March 31st, 2011 at New York Institute of Technology on 61st Street at Gallery 61. So come, it's a free opening, 7 p.m., Gallery 61. I hope you're there so you can meet Ed and look at his beautiful work. But we're going to talk about both science and art because you are you're an award-winning scientist. So the idea is that you were able to look at gravity and chaos theory in a new way. It was a kind of creative spark that's also related to your paintings. Talk about the relationship between your creativity as a scientist and your creativity as an artist.
Okay, that's an excellent question. My original talent in art goes back to when I was born. I started painting at 7 years old, and in fact my first oil paintings were about Saturn and satellites orbiting Saturn.
Really?
And these are my first oil paintings, which are good enough to hang up in galleries today. I did them at 7 years old, so it was a natural talent. So when I went off in the sciences, I always kept the art going, but I had to, of course, focus on the sciences much more. And I did that because, you know, of course, to get a PhD takes all of your time. So I did get it in mathematics. However, when I went off into the industrial world, first as a professor at Boston University, I then ended up at JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, doing these space mission work. And initially, it wasn't to find new routes to the moon. It was simply to do standard design of trajectories to get the U.S. spacecraft to Jupiter, Saturn, et cetera. It was in my spare time I came up with these new approaches. However, it's interesting, when I came up with a new approach to find new ways to get to the moon, for example, it wasn't because I sat down one day and said, let me see what mathematics can come up with to do this. What happened was I said, you know, it'd be kind of interesting to find new ways to get to the moon.
Yeah.
However, I'm never going to do this by the math because it's just too complicated. So I made a conscious decision. I said to myself one day, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do an oil painting of the Earth-Moon system and do it in a Van Gogh style where I have to work very fast with the brush strokes. And if I do that, it's my belief that somehow from that painting will emerge a new way to get to the moon.
Really? That's fascinating.
That's exactly what happened.
So because, and this is something I've been studying, because art stimulates new neural connections, you were able to think differently about the world, and that stimulated this new whole field of physics that you created.
Yeah, field of mathematics and physics it's actually a mathematical approach to the motions of things in space. But yes, it came from a painting, and in fact, I did this whole story actually in the description how the painting comes into this is published in a book I did with Princeton University Press, which is a nonprofit organization, and it's called Fly Me to the Moon, and the story is in there, and there's a chapter called Using Art for Science Discoveries.
My theory is the artist is able to see new patterns, and they're able to record it, put it down on canvas or paper, and from that, people can start to think differently about the world because the artist has cognized new realities.
Yes, in fact, I think that's sort of the idea. The way I think about it is I put out the intention that I wanted to find a way to the moon.
Okay.
That was the intention. Now, using standard techniques, because that's such a complicated intention to do, which I put out in 1986, you're never going to find something like that. It's just too complicated. So I knew, however, that the levels of reality which go beyond the conscious mind could actually solve it. However, they were not going to solve it if I had anything to do with that.
Right, the ego, the left brain.
The ego getting away would mess it up. So I said, you know, the only way this is going to happen is if I go into a trance-like state and let some other force come in which can access the other places. Now, you can call the other places subconscious, you can call them spirituality, you can call them dimensions, whatever you want. But I knew that because the art reaches in those areas, if you do it effectively, you're going to get in those places. And that's just what happened. In fact, you could see the pattern right in the painting, and I went to the computer after, and I tried to mimic the painting, and the computer came up with the same solution.
Really?
Yeah.
So was there a moment in doing that painting where a light bulb went on and you said, oh, this is it?
No, it is not. In fact, when I do paintings, unlike, see, science, basically, for me, when you get these aha moments where you make the discovery, they may last a nanosecond, and that's it. And if you're lucky, you might have one in one lifetime. Most people don't get any, and I was very lucky I had this one. However, in art, if you're really doing what I would consider an effective painting, you're really in the trance state all the time. It's not a nanosecond, but it's for hours.
Oh, I see.
So when I did this painting, the painting took me like about 2 hours to do. It was done purposely fast. It wasn't designed to be a fine artwork, but rather more to illustrate the brushstrokes. It took me 2 hours, but during that time, I was in this trance state, and for me it goes by in a second.
Let's look at some of those paintings. Can you put some of those paintings up so we can like look at this relationship that you are creating between your art and your science?
Yeah, now these paintings that we're going to be seeing are ones that, actually it's a new series that I started doing basically a year ago. And in the past year I've done about 30 of these, and this is what my show is going to be. It's a brand new series. However, each of these paintings, when I do them, I am in the trance state. So I will just I'll go for hours, and there's no sense of time going by.
Well, it looks very space-like with these orbs and this darkness and a lot of energy. It's like it is kind of Van Gogh related. What's going on for you?
Well, when I do these, I put out the intention that I want to do a cosmic scene. And for me, I represent stars in the way you see them there, these orb-like things. And then I just let and then they have tendrils coming off, which I consider them to be connections. But I don't give it a name. I just do this artistically. And then I fill in the rest in a trance state.
In an altered state of consciousness.
Altered state, I fill in the rest, and that's what comes out. Now, I'm not doing it blindly. You know, as an artist, you have to make sure the brushstrokes are correct, the color is correct, the balance is correct, that everything works correctly. So you have to take pauses from time to time. However, this is what comes out, and it's an authentic painting in the sense that it's truly coming from an altered state kind of feeling. But I definitely was wanting to achieve a sense of cosmicness is what this was about.
I mean, as a scientist, as an artist, I think these paintings hold more weight. They hold more value. Let's see the next one. They're communicating to me something beyond the conscious mind. They're activating a kind of feeling of space almost.
Yes.
Because you're so much involved in space, you're able to bring this into your art in a very dramatic way.
Yeah, and in fact, it's interesting you say that because of all the other art I've done prior to when the series started, they were very beautiful paintings. However, friends of mine who are very much involved in the art world, they said they're beautiful, they're fabulous. The one thing about your previous work was that you felt you were looking at a painting, whereas these, you feel like you're connected to the painting when you're looking at them.
You also feel like you're looking out into space, like this one, for instance, very Van Gogh-like, but it's also, what is your feeling of energy? Because it seems like you use a lot of these energy connections with these orb-type figures.
I'm not thinking when I do it. This is what comes out. I stand in front of a blank canvas and just go from a blank canvas. And this painting actually is quite large. It's about maybe 6 feet by 3 or 4 feet. And you can't see the details on here, but there's a lot of wonderful texture and brush strokes here. But the way I flow with the colors is dictated by how the mood is going as you're doing it. But it's not done haphazardly. You have to pay attention to artistic concerns as you're doing this.
Creating these images, you're tapping into a certain part of your brain, and when you're creating in science, is it the same part or is it a different part of creativity that you're...
Okay, the way I view it is this, is when you are in the field of science and you make a fundamental discovery, and I mean something which is different and not the norm.
Which you did.
Which I did. And you know, they say in the popular literature you get the aha moment.
Yes. Okay.
The aha moment happens in the altered state, and I think it lasts a nanosecond. It lasts maybe a second, and you'll get that, you go, oh, I suddenly see how it is. Like, it's like when Mozart was, I heard the stories of Mozart was composing his symphonies, he said in one of his writings that he would see the entire symphony in one thought, in one thought. However, after you do the thought, then you have to do the hard work. Now, in Mozart's case, I think he was in the trance state all the time as he did those. But most people, not Mozart, most people, if they get the idea of a symphony, the rest of it's just drudgery, it's hard work. I think in science, for most people, including myself, you'll get that initial idea, which is in the trance state, in the special location, but then the rest is the hard work of making it happen.
Well, you have to bring it into this reality.
In this reality.
Whereas painting, you can stay in that alternate reality and have people come to that place.
Yeah, you can stay in it, and that's absolutely correct. It's a really good point. So the medium allows you to stay in the altered reality, so you're in it not just for a nanosecond, you're in it for hours. So if you're doing an effective job on your painting, you're going to stay in that state, and it's just going to paint itself.
And you bring other people to that state when they look at the painting.
Yes.
Is that what you're hoping?
That's what I'm hoping happens, and that's why this new series, which is going to be in this new show I'm having, and this is what's excited so many people why I got this show.
Yeah.
One person commented, he said, this is the kind of feeling I get when I look at a Van Gogh, and I've never seen this before in a painting, but yours really pull you right in. So they felt, like you said before, totally connected to whatever these are trying to show.
Yeah. Let's go back to those paintings, because I'm getting more, because I love art, and I love the stimulation that art gives us. So for thinking differently, it's as if I'm seeing deeper into space. I'm seeing some kind of things out in the sky that I wasn't aware of before.
Yes.
Is that something you're trying, I mean...
well, I'm just trying, basically, I have no goal in mind. My goal is to go with the flow, so to speak, and that's what this painting here is called Diophantine flow, but I try to go with the flow, and basically my hope is that if I'm authentic doing what I'm doing, the painting's going to reflect that back, which it does. And I don't even know where this is. I just know it is the cosmos. I'm tapping into something, obviously, because this painting is very effective. So there is no goal except to try to transmit what I'm feeling.
Yeah, let's go to another painting, because like this is less cosmic, but I think it's sort of still marked with your pedigree.
Yes.
You know, with your knowledge. And so what's going on here?
This is just what I was doing in this particular piece was I wanted to get away from the blues, as you saw in the previous several.
It's kind of a night sky.
A night sky. And I said, well, what would this technique look like if as I was doing one of these paintings, I brought in deeper reds? What would that look like? So this is the first one that I did where the reds are actually coming in.
It's still a lot of movement I'm feeling in here, and there's a kind of a transmutation of colors, as if the reds are pushing into the yellows and doing some kind of internal change.
Yes.
It's very alchemical, I would say this. It's kind of a process. There's more blues again.
Yeah, this one, but this one I actually did before the red one you just saw, and this is where I went from the blues to the reds. This was a transition piece here, and here you see lots of the yellows and with the reds in it, and it's actually taking a new form.
Do colors mean something for you? Do you feel different things from colors as an artist?
Well, it's pretty much what they do to the psyche. The blues and the greens I feel are more distant to me, and the reds and the yellows I feel are more in front of me. And from an artist's point of view, it's much more difficult to paint with the bright reds and yellows than it is with the blues and the greens. The blues and greens, they tend to harmonize more, and you can get easily lost in them, and the colors tend to be very subtle, whereas the reds and oranges and yellows are much brighter, so it's harder to do them in a harmonious fashion, I feel. Similar of the last one, this is one I was doing, I did several in this transition style between the blues and the yellows. This is before I went to the reds that we had seen already. This is movement of color, and this one I was simply trying to, rather than do a traditional cosmic scene of things spiraling around, I try to keep it more simple. And here you'll see a face in the lower right. The yellow is sort of to me it's like a portrait of myself. This is called flowing through dimensions.
And what's your sense of dimensions? Because you've studied this mathematically.
To me, a dimension is simply, I sort of view it as almost like an altered state.
Do we exist? Are there other dimensions that seem to be present within 3D? Is there a fourth dimension? Is there a fifth dimension?
Well, as we know from, strictly in physics, the fourth dimension would be time. So as we exist in length, height, and width, we're moving in time. So time is like brings everything forward because we're moving forward. Now, there could be other dimensions that we're not perceiving. there's fields of physics get into this. I think my paintings are actually illustrating another dimension. It's not a dimension which it may be so clearly defined as length, height, the width, or time. It's something else. And I feel these paintings are in that dimension, whatever it is.
Actually, that is what first drew me to your work. I was reading on this website, David Anderson website, a comment about you, or a quote that said, your work takes place in another dimension.
Yeah.
And then I researched your science background and found, wow, this guy really is a great bridge between the science and the art. And so you recently came up with a new idea about black holes that you said were inspired by your art. Tell me how that worked.
Yeah, at last year, which would be like, I'd say June, July last year, is when I really started to do this new series that we're taking a look at. And during that time, I decided, I suddenly got the, normally, as I said in the beginning of the interview, I work with trajectories in space for spacecraft, and I may apply this to astronomy. I've done a number of astronomy applications. But I've never gone off into theoretical astrophysics. However, about the time I was doing these paintings, I just got the sense of, you know, I really should be working on black holes. I don't know how I got that sense.
It just came to you. That same creative thing that goes into your work came into your mind, and you said, okay, you want to work on black holes.
Yes, and then I was led to a meeting. I met the chairman of the astrophysics department at Princeton. He guided me to a guy at Princeton, Franz Pretorius, who is a young guy, but one of the leaders today in the field of theoretical black holes. And I started talking with him about my work and how it might be applied to black holes. And then, as an aside, by looking at my paintings, I suddenly got an idea of how to view black holes from a whole new theoretical perspective, never done before, and I developed it and then showed it to Franz about a month later. He got excited about it, and we just published a paper we submitted it for publication just a couple weeks ago. It's really what it is two things. It's a whole new representation of a way to view black holes mathematically.
Wow.
The classic black hole, which we know how to solve, how to move around, how to solve this, but it just gives a new view on it, which is much better, really, and we explain in our paper why. But we also find weird new solutions of things which they move around a black hole, which has never been done before.
Well, what was it about your painting? What did you see, or what was that spark that ignited this particular theory?
Well, here's a good, excellent question, and I guess the best way to answer it is an incredibly cool story.
Okay.
In June, I had some of these paintings up, and I had some people over. It was sort of a pseudo-party art show. It wasn't really an art show, but more of a party art show combined. And I had some neighbors come over. Anyone in my building could come over.
Okay.
And they saw a few of these paintings up. And one man, he's my next door neighbor, retired lawyer, looked at one of my paintings, and he said to me, this is when I first started working with Franz. And I think Franz was at that party. I don't quite remember. And anyhow, the guy said to me, this painting reminds me of black holes. And I said to him, I was stunned. I just started working on them. I said, why would you ever say this? He goes, because my wife's father coined the term.
Black holes.
Black hole. I said, well, who's her father? And she goes, oh, my father was John Wheeler, who was one of the major scientists of the 20th century, and he's the one that coined the term black hole. And they're my next door neighbors.
So Wheelers are you?
His daughter is my
next door neighbor.
And I didn't even know this.
So they tuned into this painting and said, this reminds me for some reason, and then you started to think more about black holes?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about black holes about the time I was doing the painting, but I didn't know these were my neighbors, so maybe there was I picked up on the vibes of them being next door and somehow got the black hole thing. I don't know. But the paintings made this possible, I believe.
The paintings made you open up creatively to think in a new way.
They absolutely did. And Franz, when he finally saw my paintings, he looked at this one painting and said, yeah, this does remind me of black holes. And this is before I even started working on them. So I was already tapped into, I would say, the energy of black holes even before I started working on them. And they were definitely connected to the paintings. And as you said, the paintings definitely open up the creative channels to work on them. I'm convinced of that.
Well, you know, Einstein, who was also at Princeton, of course, talked a lot about art and science, and they really, because science seems to be just as creative as art. I mean, except you're saying in art, you're in that altered state and you don't come out.
You don't come out.
But the science, the creativity of science is a big part of everything we see around us. I mean,
well, you know, you mentioned Einstein.
Yeah.
I think Einstein is one of those rare individuals who was doing, when he was in his prime, was doing theoretical physics in the trance state all the time. And that's why he was so successful. He had an aha moment happening continuously for probably months.
But also, you know, this is the tradition of Leonardo da Vinci, who was also a great artist and an amazing scientist and thinker. So do the two stimulate each other? Also, I mean, I sort of asked that before, but it's sort of like, seems like because you're allowing creativity to flow through this other expression, you're more creative as a scientist, more inspired.
Yes.
Will you recommend this for other scientists?
Well, okay, one thing I have noticed is there's been different periods of my life where I've made, for me, significant discoveries in science. One was the story I told at the beginning of the interview about new routes to the moon.
Yes.
The other was about this new thing I'm doing with this black hole work now.
Yes.
And there was another one back when I was in graduate school. I did a very interesting result then, which has followed me around. It's sort of a very good result, and I did it actually for a master's degree. It wasn't my PhD, it was my master's thesis, which ended up being quite a nice result. And if I look back on all three of those, they all happened at times when I was highly involved in painting.
Wow. So you recommend, I would think, for someone who's very into the literal left brain to move into the right brain, free-flowing, to get new ideas.
Yeah, I think, and doing it without even asking, in other words, just doing it is enough to open up the doors. So in other words, I would suggest if you're a engineer, scientist, someone who does very analytic kind of work, and you have a desire for wanting to come up with new ideas in your work, if you want to do that, then and you're really just not going anywhere, what I would suggest you do is seriously get into the arts in something you like and try to get into it for a few months. And if you can get really excited about that and into it, then you're automatically going to go back to your work and suddenly say, hey, wait a minute, I got a cool idea. And it's going to start to click.
And you know, I think even looking at these paintings inspires that creative imagination. I think that's the purpose of art.
Yeah, I've had a number of people look at these paintings and they just got really excited about their own work, and they emailed me after and said, I've looked at your paintings, I'm starting to work on my own things, I'm suddenly making insights I never had before.
Great. Well, Ed, thank you. Ed's art show again, Gallery 61 at New York Institute of Technology, March 31st. He's also giving a lecture called The Art and Science of a Cosmic Visionary, which you most certainly are. And I think in the future, art and science will actually merge even more. Don't you think?
I hope so. This is a great question.
Yeah.
Because I personally feel that science is very, very limited.
Yeah.
Because basically science is basically the underlying dictates of science are mathematics. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to squeeze what we observe in the universe into these laws. And I feel it's very, very limited. So the discoveries that we come up with using art, I think, are going to force us to get out of this box and try to not use these laws. But then we need a new way to view science, really.
Well, I think that's happening. I mean, I think quantum fields was a opening. It's not a actual science, but it's a bridge to something that's coming.
Yeah.
And I think it's very. I'd love to talk to you more at some point, especially about this black hole understanding of like being present when you travel into a black hole. There's no time. Yes, I could. If I have time, I could just quickly mention. Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, this is very interesting. So the unusual solutions that we found, which, by the way, this is just this is new work. Just we're talking weeks old here. Wow. It's already submitted for publication. But basically, these represent new solutions in relativity theory, not just black holes. That's exciting. And what they would represent is the following. Let's suppose this is what it would be if you had to describe it. They are
you could imagine a tiny particle like a photon of light. It leaves what we call a white hole. A white hole is the opposite of a black hole where matter comes out. Right. It's in another universe. So it leaves the white hole and goes out to a distance from it to where the event horizon is. The event horizon is where the black hole starts. Right. And then it arcs back into the black hole. Now, once it arcs back in, we can see it. It's now in our universe. Right. And what it will do is it'll do a full cycle and then fall in. All right. Now, if you were an observer looking at this, you could definitely see it. You would see the photon doing this. Right. You'd have your stopwatch. You'd say, oh, it moved for 5 hours, and it went 20 million miles, and I can see it right here. So let me go over to that photon, to an observer, a hypothetical observer, and ask how they like their trip. Right. So you'd open up the hatch of the little spaceship and say, photon, we observe you do this trip. What do you think of it? How'd you feel traveling that distance? Now, the observer on the photon would say to you, I didn't go anywhere. Because the photon itself was in a time, space, there's no time and space in a black hole? Is it because no, it's not because of that. It's these solutions, which we still don't understand, have the property that time stops on them. Time stops when you go into a black hole? No? We don't even know that's the case. We just know that on these trajectories around the black hole, there's no time. For the photon itself. For the photon itself, or the observer sitting on the photon. Really? And you can't explain it, you just know it's true. We know it's true, mathematically it's true, and right now we cannot really explain it. Could that be why, like I said earlier, the present moment is eternal? Well, we talked about this before the interview, and it would be, an analogy could be, I mean, I'm really stretching this because this result is really it's a mathematical result, it's theoretical, so it may not even have anything to do with reality. But if you could, and you could stretch and say it's valid for us, it would have the analogy of us saying, as you're sitting in one place, your mind is off doing other things, and you're simply not aware of it. It's taking trips, actually, and coming back. So it's a real spiritual dimension, like I said, like that could be possible with this. I mean, it's kind of a bridge, almost. It's definitely would imply there's possibly like another kind of dimension. Well, maybe we'll pick this up on another show. Thanks, Ed, for being here. Again, Ed's show will be at Gallery 61, March 31st, 2011. He's also lecturing the art and science of a cosmic visionary. You go to his website, belbrunoart.com. And it's right there. And it's all there. Thank you for watching New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'll see you next time.